So welcome to Algebra 1 to 2.1. So if we were here in person, I'd throw this problem up and that would cause a little bit of a dispute. I'd ask people to do 2 plus 3 times 4. So take a second, figure out what you think 2 plus 3 times 4 is. If we were here in person with a large enough group, I'm sure somebody would suggest 20 is the answer. And some people would agree with that, and some people would be grouchy. If we were here in person, I'm sure some people would get 14 for an answer. And some people would agree, and some people would be grouchy. And then I usually try to cause a little bit of a controlled argument among the groups to see what people think. Sometimes I'd get other answers. If you got other answers, you did some sort of math error or did something you didn't want to do. An argument could be made for either of these. Somebody would be willing to argue for 20, saying that 2 plus 3 is 5, and 5 times 4 is 20. If you grabbed a cheaper calculator and you punched in 2 plus 3 times 4, that calculator would tell you 20. Other people would argue for 14 because 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 adding 2 is 14. And some people in the room might have been converted to either or switch their votes or something. Sometimes we take a vote, sometimes we don't. But at the surface, it seems like maybe this has 2 right answers, and that's not the way this goes. Okay, math, pretty much most of the time, you get 1 right answer, and that's your choice. Somebody in the room would have eventually remembered, hey, wait a second, we've learned this before. There's a ruling on this. There's a thing called the order of operations, and that's what 2.1 is about. So if we stroll this way, the order of operations exists because it's going to tell you the order to do a problem, so you only get 1 right answer. If we were live and in person, we'd take a quiz on this tomorrow. Someday, soon, we'll be live and in person again, and this will appear on a quiz, so you might want to make sure you have this in your brain before you get back to school someday. But one question will be, why does the order of operations exist? It tells you the order to do a problem, so there can only be 1 right answer. Key word would be order, key phrase would be 1 right answer to work into your explanation there. And the order of operations is this. Number 1, top of the list, is parentheses. Parentheses are number 1, top of the list. First thing you should do if they're there, but they're not always there. Second thing you do if they're there are exponents. After parentheses are done, or if they're not there, skim for exponents, do exponent parts of the problem next. If exponents are there, do them. Third place is a tie. Multiply and divide tie with each other. You would do multiply and divide not until after you've handled all the exponents in parentheses. And then last place is add and subtract. Add and subtract you're going to save for last once you've worked out everything else that there is to work out. I mentioned ties twice. Add tied with subtract. Multiply tied with divide. It's also possible there might be 2 exponents in a problem. Exponent now with exponent later. Or 2 parentheses within a problem. Parentheses now with parentheses later. If you do get any ties, the tiebreaker is to go from the left to the right. There's probably some sports fans out there in the audience. You get close to the playoffs, there's always tiebreakers. There's always people with the same record, and there's some kind of tie-breaking system. Who won head-to-head, or who won by more points, or something. Our tiebreaker for the order of operations is whoever is on the left wins. You do the left before you do the right. So if we apply the order of operations to the question we just had the dispute about, adding is in last place in the debate. Multiplying was in 3rd place in the debate. Multiplying should happen before add happens. We didn't have to worry about these because it was a simple enough problem that wasn't there. But we'd want to do the multiply first to get the 12 first, add 2 to get 14. So if you were in the home audience with a 14, you were correct. If you have a nicer calculator, granted we're not using calculators yet, but a nicer calculator will tell you 14. A junky calculator will tell you 20. If you've got like a dollar store calculator, it probably says 20 if you bought it for $1. If you went and got a $15 or more scientific calculator, it knows the order of operations, it would have gotten you the 14. Memory tricks to remember this, and I don't encourage either of these. I like to write it in levels, and I'll tell you why in a second. But if we were doing a quiz in person, I'd say, what is the order of operations? And you get 1 point for putting parentheses in first place, 1 point for exponents in second place, 2 points for multiply and divide in third place, 2 points for add and subtract in fourth place, and then off on the side, not number 5, but I prefer people to write this off on the side, is that the tiebreakers that go from left to right, I prefer that off on the side because it applies to all 4 of these levels. You can tie-break parentheses, or tie-break exponents with exponents, or tie-break among these, between these two, tie-break between those two. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points of that. 1 point about this order to get 1 right answer is 8. And I usually throw 2 math questions on that and make it a 10-point quiz. But we're not going to do that quiz at home. Sometime when we're in person, there will either be a littler quiz or a bigger quiz or some kind of quiz to make sure this is in your brain, the order of operations. So you have in your hands already a paper that says Algebra 1 Notes 2.1. What I would ask you to do at home is the same thing that I would ask you to do if you were in class, is to take a sec, pause this video, try these problems, see what answers you get, and then once we're back and we unpause the video, I'll hit through what the answers are. There's a front, there's a back. If you are having some trouble doing them, what I would do is do the first couple, unpause the video, hear the explanation for the first couple, then repause the video and just like keep on rolling. So hit pause now. Okay. So at some point you're going to be back. So down the front of this paper, if you got the answers 16, 4, negative 14, 0, 14, negative 10, 0, 4, negative 4, and negative 7, and if on the back you got a 232 and a 22, I can't really do anything more for you. You got this down. You don't need me anymore. Go ahead and start the homework. The homework is on 53, it looks like, from 1 to 18. If you didn't get those answers, then you could either rework them yourself and see if you could get them, or continue to just listen on and I'll explain how you go about producing those answers. But I think I'll sit down while I talk because that's just a little bit more of a comfortable thing to do. So number 1, you have a multiply and divide, the tie. So you would do the divide first because it's on the left. 24 dividing 3 is 8. Then that 8 times the 2 is a 16. For number 2, you have parentheses, that's number 1. So do that first. Parentheses get you 6. 24 dividing 6 is a 4. Number 3, you have parentheses. Do that first. That's a 9. Then negative 5 minus 9, that's a negative minus a positive. That makes a bigger negative. That's negative 14. 4, we have a subtract and an add that tie. So do the subtract on the left first. Negative 5 minus 2 is a negative minus a positive. That's a bigger negative to get to negative 7. And then if you add 7, adding 1 of each type of number depends on who's bigger, and you subtract those. And that gets you 0 when you subtract those. 5 has parentheses to do first. In the parentheses, that's negative 4. Then the next thing, there's no exponents, so we look for multiply. The negative 4 we just got multiplies a positive 2, so that's a negative 8. And then the question boils down to 6 minus negative 8. And that's where minus minus makes plus. 6 minus negative 8 is 6 plus 8. That's our 14. 6, we have subtract, which is last place. Divide and multiply, tie. Do the divide because it's on the left. 10 dividing 2 is 5. Then do the multiply. 5 times 6 is 30. Then do the subtract. 20 minus 30, that's negative 10. It's negative because the second number was bigger. That was a positive minus a positive. The rule on that is it's only a positive if the first one's bigger, and it wasn't. 7, we get a subtraction tie, so we go on the left first. 6 minus 4 is 2. Minus the other 2 is a 0 total. 8, it's the same numbers in the same order, but the parentheses change it. Parentheses happen first. In parentheses, 4 minus 2 is 2. And then the 6 minus 2 is 4. 9 has a multiply that's higher on the list than subtract. So 5 times 2 is 10. Then we do 6 minus 10, which is negative 4. 10 has a subtract and an add to save for later. it has a multiply and a divide that's higher on the list. So 4 times 5 first, because that's on the left. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 divided by 4 next, that's 5, because that was on the right. Then the subtract and the add are tied again. We'll do the subtract on the left first. We're looking at 8 minus 20 plus 5. So do the 8 minus 20 part, that's negative 12. It goes negative because the first one wasn't bigger. And if negative 12 adds 5, we're going to get a negative 7 total, and that's the front. To the back is a big monster problem. Okay, on the back there's a thing called nested parentheses. When you have parentheses inside of other parentheses, you start all the way inside and work your way back out. So on number 11, your first move would be 4 plus 7 is 11. Then your attention is on the bigger set of parentheses. In that bigger set of parentheses, it's 10 plus 3 still, minus an 11 we made, times 6. Inside the parentheses of that stuff I just said, the multiply is next. 11 times 6 is 66. So now inside that group of parentheses, it's 10 plus 3 minus 66. 10 plus 3 first because it's on the left. 10 plus 3 is 13. 13 minus 66 is negative 53. So the problem would now look like 20 minus 4, which has just been sitting there the whole time. And we just resolved the inside there to be a negative 53. Now we've got to subtract and we've got to multiply. So we're going to multiply. 4 times negative 53 is negative 212. Okay, it's a positive 4 times a negative 53. That's a negative number. 4 times 53 is 212. And now we subtract to finish. Minus minus makes us plus. 20 plus 212, that's a 232 for 11. There aren't going to be a lot of homework questions like 11. It tends to be more like the easier ones. Last question, you'd want to put the numbers in, and you can kind of do the math as you go, in a sense. Okay, the 5's multiplying A, the 6 is multiplying B, the 3 is also multiplying B, the 2 is multiplying C, and you'll need to divide at the very end. And that stuff's all sort of just tied. So you can just put those numbers in and multiply, divide, like as you go. So the 5 times A, 5 times negative 4, that's negative 20. It's negative because when you multiply a positive 5, negative 4, one of each, different types, that's negative. Plus, if we do 6 times B, 6 times B is 48 from 6 times 8. When we do the top of a fraction, invisibly there's parentheses there. The bottom invisibly has parentheses there. So we want to do the top and do the bottom before we complete the fraction. But 3 times B on top, 3 times 8 is 24. On the bottom, 2 times C, 2 times negative 2, that's negative 4. And now let's do the division once we have that settled. When we divide a positive and a negative, that's a negative. 24 dividing 4 is 6. And then we just have to do add, subtract, clean up. Do the one on the left. Negative adding a positive, depends on who's bigger, which is the positive. We subtract those and we're looking at 28. 28 adds negative 6. Again, same rule. It depends on who's bigger, which is the positive. We subtract them and we get a 22. And that's our sheet. So on to page 53 you go. If you have any questions, need any interaction, message me and we can set up a Zoom session. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the 2-2 video someday soon.